Howdy partners, it's so good to be here again. It's been a while since I've done a full-length video. As you may have noticed on the channel, I've been focusing more on shorts. I really do enjoy this new format. It has helped save me time and allowed me to put out content on a regular basis while giving me the liberty to put energy in the places that matter the most in my life. I do love this YouTube channel, though I have so many interests in life, so it takes a rebalancing. But not today. It is that time of the year where I take a lot of time to recap all the noteworthy and inspiring games that have come out in the last 12 months. And what a year in gaming it has been, for both good and bad. So before we get on with the celebrations, which are most definitely deserved, we gotta do our yearly reality check on the status of the video game industry. I'm really hoping that one of these years it won't be necessary. One can always dream, but alas, these are dark times indeed. The studio closures and layoffs have continued in 2025. It's hard to say exactly how many layoffs we have had this year, and I'm not sure I have the heart to check out what the current tally is. The world is dark enough as is. I think I could spare myself that, at least for now. But nonetheless, it is a frightening reality that we all must deal with, especially myself being a game developer. For those who don't know, I work as a level designer. It's disheartening seeing more and more people that I know get affected by job losses. It is genuinely terrifying, and I take off my hat to all of you who have been affected by this. I know that it's been an absolute struggle for many to find work, and many of you still haven't come back to your feet. And frankly, it leaves me feeling somewhat powerless to help. A rather depressing thought to say the least. I don't know how or when the industry will rebalance itself, but I'm convinced of this much. Change is happening, and I'm optimistic that in the long run, good will come out of this period. It's always darkest before the dawn, right? And the big studios that have grown complacent in their old ways, it's painfully clear that the recycled formulas have grown stale. And not only that, but their games are far too expensive in comparison to the quality they put out. But not only that, their projects have grown astronomically expensive. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that these puzzle pieces don't paint a pretty picture. Though now that I think about it, a solution to that issue might actually require a genius creative vision and philosophical overhaul from the very root of this tree. But at the same time, in parallel to the AAA industry, we all bear witness to a veritable tidal wave of independent developers expressing their passion and creativity through the art of video games. And it's a wonder to behold. And it's the reason why I put so much time and effort into making these giant lists. Indeed, as you can see on the Bottomless Pit, I like to make big lists with a wide variety of genres and ideas. You never know from what source an inspiring and revelatory idea can come from. So I cast as wide a net as possible to soak in all the creativity. This list also serves as a double purpose of painting a clear historical picture of what a given year was like in video games. And my god, there have been so many weird, wacky, and inspiring games that have come out this year that belong in the history books. The indie scene in particular has just been on fire in 2025. And looking back on this list and its rankings, it's amazing to see the ratio of indie games versus AAA games that have made the final cut. I think we can safely say that the tables have turned. This lengthy video will also serve as a recap of the Game Awards. Not that it's the be-all arbiter of what is good or bad, but it pretty much is the biggest platform for video game awards. So I think it is historically worthy to at least highlight those moments, where I will be shouting out the winners and nominees when it is pertinent, and for the games that were only nominated, that in itself is an honor. So let's not get too worked up if a game we love didn't actually win an award. We'll have plenty of occasion in this video to shower praise on them, but then there are a bunch of games that didn't get any awards or nominations. And I would argue that this is where this list becomes most useful, to shine a light on those unsung gems and diamond in the rough experiences. Let's sing their praises, bring them to the light, and not let them rot in the shadows. They deserve their moment in the spotlight too. Now, before officially kicking off this list, a little clarification. No, I have not played and finished every single one of these games. I do not have time for that, and even if I did, I would not give up my whole year to just play all these games. As much as I do love video games, there's a lot more to life than that. And once again, this is coming from a game developer, a level designer that is head over heels in love with games, as I'm sure you'll notice going through this list. But even so, my message to all of you is to go outside, touch grass, make friends, make love, and drink water. Ugh. And let's not forget, games can be a particularly time-consuming hobby. Let's be real, a film that is 3 hours is considered to be very long, but a game that's 3 hours, well, that's peanuts in comparison. Many games can easily fall in the 50-hour to 100-hour range, if not more at times. It is absolutely insane. And whereas we can always make more money, time on the other hand is much more finite. And the older I get, the more I appreciate the time I have, or rather the time that I do not have for other things. Memento mori, my friends. You only have one life. don't waste it. Still, on the financial subject, games have become crazy expensive. Even for me, someone who has an amazing job that, all things considered, pays really well. There is no way in hell that I'm gonna buy every single game out there. Frankly, I'd love to. I sincerely believe in financially supporting game developers that I love. I want them to succeed and become wealthy. Making games is no easy task, and it does cost a lot. There's no denying that. But when new games cost $89.99, and then my eyes nearly popped out of my head when I saw Nintendo Switch 2 games at $99.99, which here in Montreal with tax that becomes roughly $120 for a single game, it's absolutely bonkers. So I skim the surface when I can. I'll borrow from friends, I'll wait for sales. The Xbox Game Pass has been a blessing in that regard for me to be able to try out a bunch of games, in many cases finish full-length games. Even free demos are very much appreciated that give me the opportunity to at least nibble a little bit on the game experience. And in some cases, I've even opened up to the prospect of watching streamers for games that genuinely do interest me, but either I just don't have the time to fully get into it, or I don't have the cash to shell out yet again for a game. This modern dystopia requires modern solutions, I guess. Alright, enough preamble. Let's get this show on the road already. To start, I want to shout out a bunch of games that, in many cases, I couldn't put too much time into. But from the brief moments I did get to dip my toes into these experiences, they provided interesting food for thought for me as a game developer, and are definitely worth checking out, even if in a limited extent. So to start off this list, a very unexpected choice for me. At number 40, Rematch. I'll be honest, when I first heard about this game, I was super disappointed. The previous project from Slowclap was Sifu, and that is one of the most badass games I've ever played. Holy shit! A dream come true for a martial arts lover. So when I heard that they were making a multiplayer football game, I was confused and worried that they were selling out, trying to make another FIFA clone. And then for months I forgot this thing existed, until I stumbled across this Rantini video where he confronted SkillUp. Great video, by the way, and oftentimes hilarious. I'm glad I discovered this. Anyway, at one point they're talking about Rematch, and the dude is raving about how this is his game of the year. And in my head I'm thinking like, what the fuck is he talking about? I was intrigued. And then the next day I saw that it was on the Xbox Game Pass, so I gave it a whirl. And honestly, really not my cup of tea generally speaking, but mechanically there's something very interesting in this third-person shooter-like football game, as Rantini described it. Interesting food for thought to say the least. And incidentally, it was nominated at the Game Awards for Best Sports and Racing Game. It definitely is one of the most out there sport games in recent memory. Moving on to number 39, and keeping with the sports thematic, I'm choosing Mario Kart World. This was the Nintendo Switch 2 launch title, though I agree it's not exactly the system-selling exclusive game we were hoping to get. And yes, I agree the open world section was shockingly void, a truly baffling design decision, especially considering that this is Nintendo we're talking about, who are known for their groundbreaking innovation. I mean, just look at how they reinvigorate the open world DNA with the last two Zelda games. Where is that design logic here? But that notwithstanding, this is an extremely polished version of the Mario Kart formula, and the addition of the Knockout Tour game mode is fantastic. When we were playing this game at the studio when it first came out, we were all having so much fun, we were literally screaming and squirming in our seats. It is just such chaotic fun. It is exhilarating. As far as I'm concerned, it is a must-have party game for the Nintendo Switch 2, even if it doesn't reinvent the wheel. Pun totally intended. And the Game Award did see it fit to give it 2 nominations for Best Family Game and Best Sports and Racing Game, which it actually did win for Best Sports and Racing Game. Kind of a no-brainer, honestly. At number 38, following up with yet another Nintendo legacy franchise, the long-awaited Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. The last time we had an original Metroid game was back in 2007. Guys, that's 18 years ago. Honestly, I still can't believe it, and in a way it does feel like it was just yesterday, but now that I think about it, God, I feel old now. Anyway, the development of this game was not exactly smooth. It was first announced back in 2017, before getting a total reboot and handed back to the original developers at Retro Studios. And the end result echoes the sign of this turbulent development. I'll be honest, I did not give it the most glowing review on this channel. It's got a lot of issues, from the lackluster puzzle design and dull backtracking, the now infamous cringe-inducing dialogue from the marine NPCs, and the main villain fares no better in that regard, and the abysmal open world desert design that was as dull as ditch water. It is appropriate to follow up this game with Mario Kart World, which had a very similar issue with the open world. And once again, just look at the last 2 Zeldas. Like, what is going on, Nintendo? And so you might be thinking like, why the hell am I including this game on my year-end list? Well, for several reasons. Despite its flaws, it is a game that I still very much enjoyed playing. I genuinely think there are some fantastic highlights. The Ice Belt level in particular was my favorite part of the game, and most of the boss fights were actually super memorable for me. And another point worth bringing up is that it's a damn fine looking game. As far as the Nintendo Switch 2 standards go, this is top tier graphic material for the handheld console. Though perhaps most of all in my eyes, from the perspective of gaming history, when I think of the year holistically, Metroid Prime 4 is inevitably going to come up in my mind. Mostly as a subject to study and dissect on how a revered franchise has returned with a myriad of issues, while still being a perfectly enjoyable experience. For my part as a game developer, there's a lot for me to learn from this, more so than many lukewarm games. And so I think keeping it at the bottom of this list is the perfect place to put it. Flawed, yes, but not forgotten. Admittedly, Metroid Prime 4 will likely be seen as a bit of a hot take on this list, even if it might be placed as low as it is. But tell me, what would a year-end list be without some controversy? And this next game is easily the biggest red flag in gaming news this year, or for the last several years for that matter. At number 37, Horses. The Italian developers at Santa Regione kicked up quite the storm recently, and it just so happens that it's another December release, quite late in the year. Anyway, their game got them banned from Steam and the Epic Game Store, and for a brief moment as well from the Humble Store. And don't get me wrong, it is without question an incredibly disturbing, revolting even interactive storytelling, political commentary experience. Indeed, using the term game feels woefully inappropriate for a project like this. And I can understand why many would not have the stomach to go through this experience. In fact, I should hope that would be the case. I think that's a healthy reaction. But I do think these kind of experiences are important for the growth of the medium of games themselves, as uncomfortable as it may be. If we can't have the freedom to wrestle with these incredibly dark and disturbing subject matters in this creative milieu, could games ever aspire to be more than just merely entertainment? Nothing detracts from any of the other games on this list, of course, but I do believe we're capable of so much more than just that. And for those who think it's unacceptable to see abusive sexual content with a young character, once again, I totally agree. But in a world where the realities of a man like Jeffrey Epstein exist, and where the powers that be would like to throw it all under a rug and that we would forget that any of this ever existed, nothing to see here, am I right? I think projects like Horses are vital to remind us of the fact that these things exist, and that it's fucking wrong and evil. What I get from Horses is certainly not entertainment. No, I get an opportunity to meditate on the shadows of human nature plaguing the souls of men. Explore this world at your own peril. What horrors humanity is capable of. Christ almighty, that's a rough one. But the horrors persist, and so do I. I do love that meme. Anyway, Metroid Prime 4 definitely was the last big release of 2025, but there are actually a bunch of games that came out at the 11th hour of the year, late in December, like Horses just before, and this next game actually released the very same day as Metroid Prime 4. Without further ado, at number 36, Routine is a very bizarre, stylish, first-person horror experience. I love how clunky and obtuse the interactions of the world are. That might sound like it is, but I promise it's not. Much of the game's aesthetics have this very Windows 95 clunkiness, which I find endearing and refreshing, and I love how diegetic a lot of the feedback and info to the solution of your puzzles are. There's very little hand-holding here, so it's quite rewarding when to start figuring things out. Admittedly, I haven't played too much of this game. Sue me, I wish I had more time. And anyways, I thought I was done with 2025 gaming before this thing came out. Jesus. But I did play long enough to poop my pants after encountering the super creepy Terminator Predator robot guy. Good luck playing this game, but I do recommend it. It's another sci-fi horror gem. Speaking of, there's another intriguing sci-fi horror game out in the wild. Yes, yet another horror game, and there will be more. But for now, at number 35, I'm choosing Chronos: The New Dawn. The Polish developers at Bloober Team have been on quite the win streak lately. Though many of their projects are rough around the edges, I always felt they had soul and a unique identity about them. And last year they did put out the Silent Hill 2 remake, which was amazing. That turned out so much better than I could have ever dreamed of. And it showed a technical prowess that was unmatched in comparison to their previous games. It was a massive evolution for the team. So it is exciting to see them follow up so soon after that game with another unique and original game from them. And this feels like a classic third-person shooter survival horror game. Think of something between Resident Evil and Dead Space, with a truly bizarre sci-fi setting and art direction. I also personally love to see all the Polish text embedded in the environment. I just wish I could have more time to finish the game from A to Z, because what I did taste was fascinating and had me curious for more. For the rest of the 30s, we're going to focus on a bunch of AAA AAA titles, and we all know that these have been dark days for the AAA industry. Their games have become bigger and bigger and more expensive than ever, and they've been sorely lacking in creativity. And while that might still be the case to some degree with some of these next games, I still think they stand out in the year for me, and they're worth thinking about and checking out. So to start with, at number 34, we have Monster Hunter Wilds. I'm sure that this is a game that will rank much higher in other people's lists, which is perfectly fine. They have all the reason in the world to love this game as much as they do. I've just personally never gone into these games as much as my friends and colleagues. I think in part because I'm more into deep narrative experiences, but even so, there's no denying the incredible craft on display here. The design of the monsters you hunt is a wonder to behold. I do love appreciating this game from afar. It does look like a lot of fun. And as for the Game Awards, it did get a nomination for Best Role-Playing Game, so check this out if you haven't already. Now, I know the title of this video would lead you to believe that we'll only be looking at 40 games on this list, but as far as I'm concerned, the rules are made to be broken. And since we're in the 30s, I thought why not cheat and throw in 3 games at the same time at the number 33 spot. And indeed, it seems that in the year 2025, the ninjas were everywhere in the land of video games. The next several titles all fall in that category. And spoiler alert, there may be a few further on down the list, but I'm genuinely delighted that though each of these games have that common thread of the ninja, they each have their own distinct gameplay DNA. First time, number 33, Assassin's Creed Shadows is the latest mainline entry for the franchise. And it has been long awaited for fans to be able to explore Japan in this series. Exploring that world with the navigation mechanics of Assassin's Creed is a blessing to behold. Does it reinvent the wheel? Certainly not. Ubisoft is still sticking to its well-worn formula, and I will be the first to admit that I am tired of the rinse and repeat gameplay formula, and there are fundamental issues regarding the gameplay identity of their duo protagonists. But mostly, I'm just glad that this game wasn't a financial and critical disaster. For a minute leading up to the release of this game, I was genuinely worried. These are trying times for Ubisoft as a company, and as much issues as I have with their games, and as a company generally speaking, I mean, I did work at Ubisoft for a while, I know how the sausage is made. Even with that, I did not want to see a mass layoff situation, which would have affected a lot of friends. Anyways, Ubisoft clearly still has ways to go, but all things considered, I think this is a pretty solid step forward. Next, tied at number 33, we have Ninja Gaiden 4. It's been a minute since we've had a new Ninja Gaiden game. 11 years actually. And they're back in style with their usual bonkers gameplay. It's not a casual gameplay experience, it's quite brutal actually. That's nothing new for the veterans of the series, of course. So if you're looking for a batshit crazy, difficult, cool, and epic game filled with larger than life boss battles, this is the game for you. For everyone else, however, run for your lives. It is worth knowing that at the Game Awards, it did get a nomination for Best Action Game. Totally deserves it. Moving into comparatively less hardcore grounds, but still with the ninja gameplay, and I think this is the most interesting of the 3 games tied at the number 33 spot, I choose Ghost of Yotai. This is one of the flagship PlayStation 5 exclusive games this year, and I'm sure this is a game that will rank much higher on other people's lists, which is understandable, and incidentally it did get 7 Game Award nominations, one of the most that any games got that night. It was up for Best Game Direction, Best Narrative, Best Art Direction, Best Score and Music, Best Audio Design, Best Performance, and Best Action Adventure Game. It didn't actually win anything, but I don't think that takes any of its success away from it. There's no question in anyone's mind that this is one of the biggest and most polished AAA games of the year. Perhaps in my eyes, it plays it a little too safe. As a sequel, it's not a big evolution from what we've seen last time around. Even so, they're clearly some of the best in the industry. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. While we're still in the 30s, I think I'll permit myself to cheat one more time and have another 3 games tied at the number 32 spot. And in fact, these next 3 games actually all come from the same developer, which is impressive to say the least. I've always been a fan of Obsidian Entertainment, and perhaps in 2025 they didn't deliver a masterpiece game like they did back in 2022 with Pentiment. My God, was that game incredible. For the most part, it does feel like they went back to doing their Bethesda kind of game with their own unique take to it, but nonetheless, they delivered 3 interesting titles. And once again, it's no small feat to pull off all of them at the same time. So for the first tie at number 32, Avowed. This is their first-person dungeon-crawling adventure, and the likes of what we've seen from the Elder Scrolls games. Even if this game doesn't reinvent the wheel, I did find it to be a nostalgic gaming experience, with an interesting world to discover. And it's actually the only game from Obsidian that got them a Game Award nomination, which it did find itself in the best role-playing category for Avowed. And once again, tied at number 32, we have The Outer Worlds 2, a sequel that as well doesn't reinvent the wheel, I mean, after all folks, we are in the lowest tier of this year-end list. Still, there's a lot of quality to be found. It builds on the foundations of the original, which it was definitely inspired from the Fallout game series. And remember, Obsidian did make the beloved Fallout New Vegas back in the day. This game still managed to bring a lot of interesting role-playing moments that you can compare notes with your friends on all the wild, divergent shit you've done. And the game does have a genuinely great sense of humor. Though arguably for me, the most interesting and creative project from Obsidian this year would have to be Grounded 2, a game which is still in early access. I'm definitely interested to see the final result once it's fully cooked and out of the oven, but even in its current state, hot damn, it's a cool game. It's a really clever survival game with RPG elements, co-op play, as well should you desire, and the whole narrative premise with you playing these teenagers shrunk to a miniature size and forced to contend with the now colossal bugs is super cute. The presentation values are off the charts. And this was co-developed with Eidos Montreal. I actually had no idea of that until I saw friends working there start making posts about this game that they've been working on. Congratulations are in order. And finally, to end this first batch of 10 games, or more since we've been cheating, sorry not sorry. At number 31, Doom: The Dark Ages. This latest entry in the series takes a bit of a change in direction. Yes, the action is still intense, you being this unstoppable killing machine against the hordes of hell, but I genuinely appreciate the risk the devs took to bring some meaningful changes to the gameplay formula. It's so rare to see AAA developers reinvent their special sauce on each new release, something that I don't think we hear enough praise on. Now you have a shield that is a super dynamic tool for combat. The charging feels exhilarating, allowing you to crash into your foes like a battering ram. And there's an added layer of game mechanic mastery when it comes to dodging and parrying your foes' attacks. It's an exciting idea that brings new life to this kick-ass series. I wasn't able to play too much of this game, not like Doom Eternal, which in my humble opinion is a bloody masterpiece, and I am bummed out that Mick Gordon isn't making the soundtrack here, which I totally understand from his part, seeing what he went through the last time. A rather dark, confusing, and ultimately disturbing chapter in game development. Look it up, I'm not gonna open that Pandora's box here. But even with my limited time with this game, there's clearly a lot of hard work that went in here, and it did get 2 nominations at the Game Awards, for Best Action Game, and for Innovation and Accessibility, which it actually won in that category. This is one badass game, and a perfect place to reach the top 30. And so here we are at the top 30. To kick off the next 10 games, I'll follow up with a whole bunch of indie games that I haven't been able to play too much, unfortunately. But had I infinite time, I'm 500% positive that these games could have broken into the top 20. And this is going to be our first yearly reminder that these lists are subjective, in the eye of the beholder and all that. But I don't think anyone is going to argue with the fact that these games are remarkable, at least on some level, regardless of where they might fall on the list. It would be criminal in my opinion to not sing praise of these games, just because all we be doing is the same measly top 5 that everyone else is doing. The industry is loaded with talent, and what an honor it is to see all these games resonate with players. To start off this group of 10 games, time for one more Montreal production. I do like shouting out fellow local game developers whenever it's warranted, and this game in particular I feel is one of the unsung gems of the year. At number 30, South of Midnight. This is a fascinating, soulful, folklorish fantasy adventure set in the American South. At the start of the story, a devastating hurricane tears away our protagonist's home. This sets her off on a journey to find her mother and uncover the secrets of her family's ancestry. The characters are endearing with lovely performances. The art direction is imaginative, beautiful, and evocative. It has a very unique visual identity. It's borderline stop motion animation like. It's a little strange admittedly, but I totally fell in love with it. And the platforming gameplay made me feel nostalgic for simpler times, where all I needed is a great adventure with a strong beating heart at the core of its story. I do feel like this game has gone under most people's radars. The critics gave it okay scores, and I haven't really heard much talk about it. So I was delighted to see it get 2 Game Award nominations, one for Innovation and Accessibility, and the other for Games for Impact, which it actually won. I was delighted at the Game Awards when we all learned that it would be getting a Nintendo Switch release later in 2026. So I think that is going to be the perfect game for me to play on my commute to and from work, and an occasion to finish it from start to finish. This most certainly is worth your time. Don't sleep on it. At number 29, we have Skate Story. Honestly, I didn't even know this game existed until I was finishing this list. And once I started looking into it, I was blown away by its unique vision. We have never seen a skating game quite like this before. This is why I hold off doing these year-end lists as late as possible. You never know when another surprise indie gem will sneak up on you. I'm taking mental note of this one and I'll check it out more thoroughly in the future. And it is yet another game to come out in December that is totally worth our attention. At number 28, Luminous Arise. It's not the usual kind of game that catches my interest, but in the spirit of the science of game development, this is a truly remarkable piece of interactive entertainment. At first glance, it might appear to be nothing more than a fancy coat of paint on a game like Tetris, but then you realize there's so much more going on here. Even more so when you look at the history of the developer behind this game. This is a puzzle game that explores synesthesia by a method of sight, sound, and manipulating player emotions through your in-game interactions. Not only is this game a visual and auditory feast on your senses, I mean, just look at those visuals. Beyond that, I'm genuinely impressed by the creativity of the unique level thematics with the block designs. Each new level truly has its own special flavor. Furthermore, each level evolves in a surprising way. It's quite the journey. It's impossible to deny the wondrous creativity of Luminous Arise. Like I said, it isn't my usual cup of tea, so because of time and budgetary constraints, I decided to pass on buying this game. But even so, I respect the hell out of it, and I feel obliged to shout it out on this list. It would be incomplete without it. At number 27, Back to the Dawn. This is a rich storytelling RPG experience, where you learn to survive in a high security prison. You spend a lot of your time socializing with the inmates and living with the consequences of your choices. There's actually a lot of narrative branching, depending on how you choose to play, and which character you decide to start with. Do you focus on clearing names through hard work, or do you rise to the top of the hierarchy in one of the gangs? At the core of it, I find it very apropos in our modern dystopia to have played as a journalist framed and imprisoned for reporting on an injustice. I wasn't able to play through the whole game. God knows I'd love to, but we're not even halfway through this list. There's just so much content out in the wild. Even so, I have been inspired by the qualities of this game that I have experienced. At number 26, we have Megabunk, one of the many dangerously addictive games of this year. Is this a 3D version of Vampire Survivors? Yeah, but I wouldn't say it's a total ripoff. It still has a boatload of personality, whether we're talking about the characters, weapons, or items you uncover, and there is a lot of thought and creativity that has gone into that. My favorite weapon has to be the banana. Of course Banana Mike would choose the banana, and throw hundreds of giant bananas that are getting bigger and more numerous. Banana! But besides that, it brings a clever twist to that Survivor gameplay loop on how you use the environment to locate your objectives and to do some parkour. It's just so much fun. And as a bonus, this game did get a nomination at the Game Awards for Best Debut Indie Game, but the developer at Vedinad actually retracted from that nomination, stating that as cool as it was to get that nomination and it is very much appreciated, they don't believe they qualify for it, because apparently they have released games under a different name. It's an epic move of integrity that has gained this dev a lot of goodwill. At the very least, it certainly has among me and my level design colleagues. GG. Well played, good sir. At number 25, following up with yet another roguelite. There have been quite a few great ones this year actually. Evil Empire, the developers behind a smash hit Dead Cells game, are back with the Rogue Prince of Persia. It is a compelling adventure that starts off with a bang, with interesting characters along your journey. The art direction is rather lovely. I was immediately impressed in that regard, and the gameplay was both exciting and challenging, featuring daunting boss fights, a variety of weapons and upgrades to experiment with, but the biggest surprise has to be the parkour navigation mechanics in this 2D world. It seems that the Prince of Persia games are back in style. Last year's The Lost Crown was a surprise hit and one of my favorites of 2024. I love this game. I just wish I had the prince's time traveling powers to be able to finish this game from A to Z, but alas, I do not. At number 24, following up with yet another roguelite, and trust me, there will be more, Absalom is a super compelling beat-em-up style of game. It features RPG elements with classic hero archetypes, and the art direction is phenomenal. Artistry in game development truly is remarkable nowadays, and this is further proof of it. The game is already a boatload of fun on its own, but I'm pleased to report that this is yet another couch co-op friendly game, a trend that I am delighted to see returning. Maybe there is hope after all for the future of games, at least in some regards. Absalom was a bit of a smash hit this year, and did manage to get nominated at the Game Awards for Best Indie Game. Did you think that that was the last of the ninja games we've seen in 2025? Think again! At number 23, we have Shinobi: The Art of Vengeance. This marks the revival of a long dormant gaming series from Sega. The last Shinobi game was back in 2011 on the 3DS with Shinobi, and before that it was Nightshade on the PS2 back in 2003, so it's been a damn long time. And this ninja is back with a vengeance. This has to be one of the most badass action games of this year. Those boss fights look epic as hell, and incidentally, it did get nominated for Best Action Game at the Game Awards. I unfortunately wasn't able to play this game, but from everything I'm seeing, god damn, this looks awesome. If you were in any way, shape, or form interested in this game, go for it. And for one more ninja game, I promise that this time it's going to be the last one, at least as far as 2025 is concerned. We'll see for the next year. Near the start of this list, I did mention how it's been 11 years since the last Ninja Gaiden game, and what a year this has turned out to be for the Ninja Gaiden franchise, because not only did we get one game, we got 2 Ninja Gaiden games. At number 22, Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. Ragebound harkens to a more retro style of gaming. Think of the arcade NES era of games. It's a mission-based side-scroller that's brutally difficult. Some of those boss fights seriously tested my skill. I vividly remember being shocked at how fragile my health bar was, with no way of upgrading it. But then once you begin to master the limited game mechanics and learn the boss's patterns, you enter a flow state to become a ninja worthy of legend. And indeed, though your actions are limited, I love how they made me feel like a ninja. You run super fast and perform neat parkour tricks. I particularly love that pirouette attack that lets you bounce off enemies. And the one-hit kill on enemies is a refreshing design choice. It really highlights that feeling of being a precise speed demon killing machine that ninjas are known for, with a bunch of clever magical twists in the adventure. Yep, Ragebound is an absolutely kick-ass game that I highly recommend. I do hope you're ready for a steep challenge because this game will show no mercy. And to close off this next batch of 10 games, I'll be following up with another 2D side-scrolling adventure. At number 21, I'm choosing Ender Magnolia Bloom in the Mist. Though it is a 2D perspective game, this time it's much more in the Metroidvania style of gaming. Ender Magnolia perhaps doesn't reinvent the wheel of what we come to expect of those kind of games, but it's one of the most polished versions of it. There are so many wonderful quality of life user experience details that I love. And the art direction, my god is this game beautiful to look at. The soundtrack is equally gorgeous, perfectly complementing this melancholy world. As far as I'm concerned, this was the first great game of 2025. It released way back in January, and though it is fresh in my mind, it's a game that I feel nobody's talking about, which is a damn shame because I think it's brilliant. If you're itching for an interesting Metroidvania, this is solid gold. At the top 20, we're making a lot of progress here, and things are just heating up. We've already seen a bunch of truly unique gaming experiences thus far on the list, especially from the indie scene, as you can see. But as of now, things are really going to start kicking up a notch in terms of creativity. These are games that truly have the potential of making their mark on gaming history and moving the medium forward into the future. Honestly, I'm overjoyed we're reaching an era where the confines of what video games can be grow larger and larger. It's very exciting and inspiring to me. So let's start off with a bunch of weird ass games. At number 20, The Alters. The Polish game developer is at 11-Bit Studios, known for games like This War of Mine and the Frostpunk game series, are back with a very different kind of gaming experience from what they've usually made in the past. It features a very surprising mix of gameplay genres. Indeed, it was nominated at the Game Awards for Best Sim Strategy Game, which does raise an eyebrow for me, but at the same time it does make a little bit of sense. So it features third-person survival, exploration of an alien planet with resource gathering, while pressed for time, giving this hint of a roguelike loop. We have 2.5D navigation on your base building. Think of a game like Fallout Shelter, for example. And arguably most importantly, you have a mysterious dystopian sci-fi story at the forefront, where you are the lone survivor after your spaceship crash lands in this mysterious planet. Thus, you are forced to use a rather disorienting technology to create clones of yourself to repopulate your deceased crew. The narrative implications of the alternate versions of the protagonist and the timeline of their life choices are quite fascinating and emotional too. Honestly, it struck a chord with me. On top of the story and gameplay, I'm really impressed with the art direction of this game. This Polish studio isn't necessarily the biggest game dev in the world, and yet I believe the graphic fidelity of The Alters is able to hold its ground and in many ways surpass all of the AAA competition out there. This oozes with style, and it's a fascinating piece of gaming that I'm glad I got to check out, even if once again, I wasn't able to complete it. Moving on to number 19, The Drifter is an instant classic in point-and-click adventures. It's not too often that we see those kind of games nowadays. And indeed, this is a game that I personally haven't heard anyone talk about. It's a crime as far as I'm concerned. I genuinely believe that these Australian developers have made the best point-and-click adventure since Norco, and I do not sing that praise lightly. And what a captivating adventure The Drifter is. Told through the eyes of this drifter, who is essentially a homeless man, Mick Carter is returning to his hometown for a funeral, but unfortunately becomes a witness to a murder. This will be the first of many shocking revelations in the story. It's a thrilling ride filled with conspiracy and a surprising amount of action, given the usual slow pace of this genre of gaming. I find it to be a refreshing and dynamic switch up. The voice acting equally helps give the game a lot of charisma, charisma, of which it has plenty. And what makes this all the more exciting is the fantastic art direction. The pixel art style is super evocative and beautifully animated, marking yet another gold standard in pixel art aesthetics. This unsung indie gem is exactly the reason why I make this list as big as it is. It's such a shame that more people aren't aware of it. So I hope that this video helps to shine a light on this game, even if only for one person. I would consider that as a win. Spread the word, people. At number 18, I'm choosing perhaps the most lo-fi gaming experience on this list, but that doesn't make it any less interesting. Oh boy, is this a head scratcher. At number 18, we have Eclipsium. This is a twisted indie experimental first-person horror experience that left quite the lasting impression on me, though I do admit that the first moments of this game aren't exactly flattering. It's slow and it does take a minute to get going, but once the game does warm up, it presents some truly fascinating ideas. One particular mechanic later in the game is so unique and mind-bending and disorienting, it left me blown away by its novelty and creativity. That's one of the most noteworthy and creative feats in gaming of the year. Just wow. Mind-blowing stuff. On top of the mysterious and metaphorical story, the visual identity of Eclipsium is just as bewildering and fascinating as the rest of it. It feels like a glitched out Windows 95 psychedelic fever dream. Truly, I've never seen anything like it. And even if it did give me a headache, once again, the creativity and original flavor that Eclipsium brings to the table is a force to be reckoned with. So even if it is rough around the edges, admittedly it could use some polish, I can't imagine a year-end list of 2025 without this game. This is truly a diamond in the rough kind of indie gem experience that I'm sure most people have never even heard of. Let's change that, shall we? Following up with yet another unsung first-person horror indie gem, though cut from a very different cloth this time. At number 17, we gotta talk about The Seance of Blake Manor. This game feels like a love letter to whodunit mysteries. And FYI, if you don't know me, I'm a total sucker for those genres. I've grown up loving Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot, I got the whole library somewhere below me, and of course Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes, who's somewhere behind me right now. Though that is neither here or there right now. Only this time, that formula is infused with a supernatural horror mystery. The year is 1897 and you are summoned to a remote hotel in Ireland to investigate the disappearance of Evelyn Dean. Right from the start, you notice that something is out of the ordinary. Subtle, ghostly apparitions begin to plague you, and come bedtime, your dreams bring about nightmarish revelations. The actual investigation is quite hands-on and surprisingly deep. Each action, whether it be to ask a question, inspect an item, or interact with the environment, costs you a minute of your time. The clock is always ticking, which affects the timetable that moves the wide cast of characters into different rooms, each with their own intents for being there. In a way, it makes me think of this giant chessboard with moving pieces. And before you know it, you begin to form a web of connecting events, facts, and possible motivations that bring you closer to revealing the truth. It's a fascinating game that I'm itching to resolve its deepest mysteries. Among all the games that I've yet to finish, this is easily among my highest priorities. It's an incredibly involving game that really makes me feel like a detective. And it's got a hell of a stylish presentation, even if it is on the lo-fi side, mechanically speaking. Luckily, it's got plenty of depth in the areas that it counts most. There's one more horror game we need to talk about from the year 2025. And I imagine many of you will have guessed the identity of that game by now. At number 16, we have Silent Hill F. This is handily the best original game in the series since Silent Hill 4, a game that came out back in 2004, so it has been a minute since we've had some quality Silent Hill gaming. Anyway, it's refreshing to see a game finally return to Japan. And yes, the game is set in a small Japanese village in the 1960s, but I was actually referring to the game returning to Japanese hands in terms of its creative roots. It's a clear night and day difference when it comes to the wild new direction that this game is taking. And that is not to say that this game is perfect. The combat is easily the most frustrating part of this game. The further you go in the game, the more enemies are thrown your way to artificially increase the difficulty rather than proposing a new and interesting gameplay challenge. And it doesn't help that Hinako is so slow to land her attacks. I am never gonna forget this quote from my friend, so I cannot take credit for it, but it bears repeating. It really feels like Hinako takes 2 business days to land her attack. And oftentimes when you are doing that, you're a centimeter away from the enemy, and then you get stun locked in a 10-hit attack combo. Christ almighty, is it frustrating. But that aside, I was genuinely surprised by the story. I actually think it's one of the best narratives of the year in gaming. So I was really pleased to learn that at the Game Awards it got 3 nominations for Best Narrative, Best Audio Design, and Best Performance. Shout out to Konatsukato who played Hinako. It's an intriguing tale paired with some thoughtful puzzle design that brilliantly teach us on the world and characters. And the things that happen, I still can't believe they happened. Especially in a Silent Hill game. Many people would argue that these ideas don't belong in a Silent Hill game, and I actually might meet them halfway on that point. I kinda see where they're coming, this shit is crazy. But ultimately, I appreciate the risk Silent Hill F took here. It was a risk, the game is a vibe, but I think it has its heart in the right place, especially when it comes to the symbology and metaphors it's trying to create. And when it comes to the aesthetics, the game has a really unique visual identity. The clash between the cold, lonely Japanese village and the hot red pink of this organic, flowery growth is a powerful contrast. And I love the inclusion of Japanese temples and shrines. It's quite beautiful, frankly. The revelations of ancient folklore and how it ties into the story is equally fascinating. It's strange, unthinkable even, to see myself including a Silent Hill game on my year-end list for a second year in a row. It's been roughly a 20-year-long abyss of awful games for this once beloved franchise. And now it seems we're entering into a new era of this series. It's a damn good time to be a Silent Hill fan again. If we keep getting interesting and creative projects like this, I think the future looks quite promising. Apart from that new film, Return to Silent Hill, it looks awful. And yes, I will go see it. Expect a film review late in January for this. Moving on to a very different kind of game. At number 15, Ball Pit. I, like many of you I'm sure, put way too much time into this dangerously addictive brick-breaking roguelite. It's fiendishly simple to get into, and even harder to get out of that game loop. And for all its simplicity, there's a decent amount of depth to discover. I started to pick up on new strategies to leverage rather than just subjugate myself to the random elements of this game. There's actually quite a lot of variety in playstyles, whether it be in all the different special ball types, and especially discovering all the different evolutions of those balls. And the playable characters you eventually unlock also meaningfully affect the way you play this game. There's also a base building aspect between each round that I found to be an enjoyable change of pace. And finally, I do love the vibrant personality that Ball Pit has in its presentation. It's no surprise to see it earn a nomination at the Game Awards for Best Independent Game. It's just so much damn fun to play. I don't care how much brain rot this causes. And it was the perfect companion to let me turn off my brain for a bit, listen to some music, put on a podcast, and enjoy the long commute to and from work. So thank you, Ball Pit, for the hours of entertainment. At number 14, Keeper. This is perhaps the most bizarre game of the year. There have been a few of those this year, as you may have noticed, but I think this one takes the cake. Double Fine, the visionary developers behind the Psychonaut games, return with yet another quirky and experimental gaming adventure. Here you play as this off-kilter lighthouse with crab legs, and your face is literally a giant lamp where you can point light at things with your joystick. And you have an eccentric, exotic bird as your companion, whose name is Twig. It's a very Banjo-Kazooie-esque dynamic duo we have here. And if you think that is strange, just wait until you see the entire arc of this adventure. Every time I thought I'd wrap my head around the experience of this game, no. Keeper totally flips the table on its head and reinvents itself. It is without question one of the most creative and boldest gaming statements of the year. And it's short. Roughly 4 hours long. As far as I'm concerned, this is an unmissable game, keeping up our glorious streak of incredible independent games. At number 13, Sword of the Sea is another brilliant chapter in the life of Giant Squid. The founding developers of this company worked on Journey, a beloved game for all the right reasons. And since the start of this new company, they've made equally wonderful and artsy projects such as Abzu and The Pathless. And I think Sword of the Sea might just be their best game yet. The art direction is a beauty to behold, and the soundtrack is just as awe-inspiring, truly some of the best gaming music of the year. And the navigation gameplay is just so smooth and inherently fun to play. Think of it as a magical, spiritual Tony Hawk game. Your sword surfboard is an incredible vehicle. And it as well is a short game. It took me roughly 3 hours to finish the campaign. This is another golden example of how less can be more. I could not recommend it more. Now, this next game on the list personally hurts me. Not because it's bad, the polar opposite actually. This game looks incredible, and it kills me that I haven't played it. At number 12, I'm talking about Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I did not buy this game, not because it costs too much. I've seen numerous sales on this one. In fact, right now it's at 50% off, and it takes everything within me to resist the temptation to buy this. Because I know that I just don't have time for another 100+ hour gaming adventure, especially one so deep and intricate as this one. This doesn't feel like the kind of casual experience I can just easily jump in and out of. Even so, you'd have to be deaf, dumb, and blind to not recognize this as one of the most impressive role-playing games, not just of this year, but of all time really. Everything I've seen from Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has left me floored. The richness of the world, characters, and the choices you make are a marvel to behold. I desperately want to include this in the top 10. I have no doubt that it's that good, and everyone, and I do mean everyone, says it is worthy of the highest of honors. And indeed, at the Game Awards, it had 3 nominations. It was up for Game of the Year, Best Narrative, and Best Role-Playing Game. If any of you watching this video know how to time travel, so I can magically create more time and play this game, please hit me up in the comments. Until then, I'll weep and look at this game from a distance and just admire it. We're almost at the top 10! For our final game in this batch of 10 games, I'm choosing one of the biggest and most impressive AAA releases of this year. In many ways, I consider this to be the gold standard of what AAA releases should be like. At number 11, Death Stranding 2 on the beach. Hideo Kojima is back at it again with a sequel to his visionary debut project at Kojima Productions. I'll be honest though, overall I love this game. I think that it smoothed out the rough edges a bit too much in this sequel. It's an incredibly fun game and much more accessible than the first, but all the elements of horror have been ironed out in the process, and the exploration feels way too easy in comparison to the daunting terrain of the first game. I do feel that it's lost some of its avant-garde touch in its pursuit of making a more feature-complete and action-based game. Still, there is no denying that even with that feedback, there is nothing, and I do mean nothing, that explores ideas that a game like Death Stranding 2 does, especially in the landscape of AAA games. The story is all sorts of weird, populated with eccentric characters. Though I find the story easier to follow this time around, there's still plenty of head-scratching moments, and the finale of this game is a choice. It's over the top and wild, but it actually kind of works for me. It was a moment, to say the least. Of course, the cinematic quality of this game is damn near like a film. In fact, the intro cinematic shook me to my core because I literally thought it was a National Geographic film and not actual in-game graphics. I don't think it's much of a debate to state that Death Stranding 2 has the most advanced console graphics to date. It is a shining beacon of light to showcase the power of the PS5. Now that's the kind of exclusive that Sony needs for the PS5. But I would venture to say that the graphic fidelity isn't the most impressive technical aspect of Death Stranding 2. I could not believe that from the main menu it takes less than a second to fully load the game. I'm talking full open world, highly detailed materials, VFX, and the most detailed and expressive character models you'll ever see on a console game. All of that loaded in a second on the baseline PS5, not the PS5 Pro. Just wow, that's some truly black belt game development shit right there. So it's no wonder that it got a whopping 7 Game Award nominations. In all the major categories, of course. It was up for Game of the Year, Best Game Direction, Best Narrative, Best Art Direction, Best Score and Music, Best Audio Design, and Best Action Adventure. Kojima is here to stay, and I consider that a blessing for us all. He truly is one of the great game development visionaries of all time. And this is further proof of it. This is it, the top 10 games of 2025. Things are getting really heated up in here. Let's take off a layer, shall we? Whew. These really are the gaming projects that I believe to be the most creative, unique, and memorable of all that I've experienced this year. And it's interesting to consider, looking back on my choices, just how many of these are AAA games. Of course, this is just my opinion. I am going with what resonates most in my heart. Something that is 100% subjective to each individual. Though I imagine that some of these choices and rankings may come as a surprise, I don't think anyone could argue with the fact that these games have something remarkable in each of them, in very unique ways. So without further ado, let's proceed. At number 10, Citizen Sleeper 2 Stalwart Vector. Now here's a gaming experience that deserves a lot of attention, which I don't think it got enough of that. It is one of the more lo-fi games on this list. It's minimalistic in its gameplay, your actions are performed through these dice rolling mechanics, and otherwise it's basically a graphic novel. Its simplicity may come as a shock when analyzing the rankings, especially with a technical marvel like Death Stranding 2 a moment ago. The irony has not gone unnoticed for me, but the heart wants what it wants. This is a deep and engaging space adventure where you play this sleeper, a remnant of a human soul living within an android body. You escape captivity from your dangerous overlord and are on the run the whole game. The presence of his threat is keenly felt, pressuring you to perform tasks, do jobs, and stay constantly on the move. A not so simple task, due to the constant limited resources, such as fuel, money, and food for that matter. I spend many cycles hungry, starving even, praying that it can get back to a stable state. Few games evoke as strongly the scrappy poverty in a space world dystopia. At times, it made me feel like I was living on the Bebop, with my own crew of eclectic characters, and some of them, their loyalty may be questionable. It is a fascinating sci-fi RPG experience, with a nuanced style of writing, tasteful aesthetics, and punishing gameplay. I was so surprised by how much I love this game. It really is an indie gem that has gone under too many radars. Moving on, this is easily the shortest game on this list. It took me roughly 2 2 hours to finish it. And not only that, but it's about time that we shower praise on a non-English language game. At number 9, I am choosing Despelote. This is a nostalgic trip down memory lane, back to the year 2001 in Quito, Ecuador. We experience the story through the eyes of a young boy, enchanted by the possibility that Ecuador might actually qualify for the FIFA World Cup. That passion and excitement is infused into the minimalist gameplay experience, fidgeting in your chair in your classroom, looking out the window, eager to play football with your friends. The first-person perspective football mechanics I found to be quite novel. Even if they lack precision, they're quite endearing. There's a lot in the presentation that I found remarkably thoughtful. The art direction is unique, colorful, and full of personality. It makes me think of a grainy old Kodak picture come to life. And I love the infusion of real-life images into the game, which further enhances this feeling of nostalgia that is ever present in Despelote. The story as well has a fascinating arc. That final chapter of the game really caught me off guard. This is a beautiful and poetic gaming experience that has left such a strong impression on me, even months later after having finished it. It has gone under a lot of people's radars for a long time, but I do feel it's gotten a bit of a word-of-mouth notoriety over time. And I was so delighted to see it at the Game Awards with 2 nominations. It was up for Games for Impact and Best Debut Indie Game. I love the international film community, so it is a pleasure that I can shout out the international gaming community as well on this list. There's so much talent all across this planet. Moving forward, I hope we get to experience more of these kind of humble gaming experiences. Climbing further up the list, here's a bit of an oddball gaming experience. At number 8, Wanderstop is quite the soul-searching journey. I dare say it's one of the most zen games I've ever played, and certainly the only game that tackles the subject of burnout in any meaningful way. You see, Alta used to be an undefeated professional fighter, but now she's unable to mentally recover from her recent defeats, and thus she finds herself looking for this master fighter. But along the journey, she collapses in a dark forest from exhaustion, unable to carry the once familiar weight of her sword. It's quite a powerful metaphor, that little detail. Lost in these woods in more ways than one, she wakes up in the grounds of a magical tea shop. It is here where she is able to rest and find herself again while aiding Boro, the Zen master tea shop owner, in tending the grounds and serving eccentric customers, who may be just as lost as you are. A mysterious power seems to reside within the Wanderstop tea shop, and it attracts a variety of lost souls, each for their own unique reasons. The gameplay is minimalistic and it focuses more on the emotional journey rather than the gameplay complexity. Think of it more as an emotional experience, rather than a gameplay heavy challenge. But even so, the one level environment is enchanting and lovingly crafted. The gardening and tea brewing mechanics are fun and yet surprisingly creative. Not only did I begin to feel like a potions master at Hogwarts later in the game, but I was genuinely taken aback by some of the requests. More than the actual request, it was the way the request was presented that left me in stitches. And indeed, this is actually one of the funniest games of the year. There are some truly great moments here that resonate with me even months later. The writing is on point with each and every one of these wacky characters, and the visual character design for each of them is so expressive and unique. The animations go a long way to give them a boatload of personality, and aesthetically this game is simply gorgeous. Wanderstop has so much flavor in its colorful art direction, and the soundtrack is whimsical, quirky, and at times spacey, which are perfect qualities for this soul-searching adventure. The music composer C418, best known for his music in Minecraft, made something truly special here. It's another major highlight in the year for game music for me. It only had 1 nomination at the Game Awards, it was up for Games for Impact, but ultimately, to me, Wanderstop proves that minimalism does not equal shallow in depth. It is a prime example of that statement, and a promising evolution of the meaning of video games and how it tackles emotional trauma with poetic and comedic nuance. I love this game so much. Keeping in line with comedy, this next game is a comedic goldmine. Oh my god. At number 7, Dispatch. When I first heard about this game, I knew it was going to be awesome. You did not need a crystal ball to figure that part out. But what I didn't realize is just how good it was going to be. This is the first game from Ad Hoc Studio, a new indie studio that just put out their very first game, and indeed it got a nomination at the Game Awards for Best Debut Indie Game. Many cry foul that it did not get more nominations, potentially that may be due to the late release in the year before the Game Awards. In any case, this studio is composed with veteran developers from Telltale Games, and the game was made in collaboration with Critical Role, and that role-playing choose-your-own-adventure expertise shines oh so bright in Dispatch. Some may be annoyed by how little gameplay there is here. You don't have a character that you control in the 3D world. Your only interactions are the occasional QTEs. You mostly interact with the map by selecting highlighted locations and choosing which hero is best fit for the job. You do have the occasional hacking minigame, which I think is tastefully done. It's simple but wicked effective and brings a nice change of pace. And of course, you must choose your dialogue to influence how the story develops, and to see how your relationships evolve with each of the characters. Though in terms of mechanical interactions, it may be limited, what you do get is a phenomenal interactive animated film experience that you will not want to put down until you've binged the whole thing. That's literally what happened to me. I started on Saturday night, and then Sunday, that was my whole day, and I was as happy as a kid in a candy store. And just in terms of visual fidelity, this looks amazing. It's essentially on par with the best animated films playing on the big screen, and I would go so far as to say that this is the best superhero story of the year, and the action throughout the game is pretty damn kick-ass too. But more importantly than the visual aesthetics, the casting and writing is really what makes Dispatch shine. You have a mix of big Hollywood names such as Aaron Paul and Jeffrey Wright, a host of famous YouTube content creators such as Alana Pierce, Moist Critical, and Jacksepticeye. You as well have music artists such as Young Gravy and Thought Squad. Honestly, the entire cast was perfect for their roles, regardless of their level of fame or how much screen time they had. The execution of their dialogues was pure fire. And I was not ready for just how rated R this game would be. There's a lot of coarse language and inappropriate shit that I haven't heard in any game quite like this before. This may be a world filled with superheroes, but this motley crew of losers and reformed criminals are a hot mess to say the least. The shit they say constantly caught me off guard, even in a passive context. When they'd be sent off to do their job, their comments and the situations they create are totally unhinged. What a riot. If you're looking for something wicked cool, entertaining, and clever, and a story that isn't too long, with all 8 episodes it might take you 8 to 10 hours to finish, then this is the game for you. It's an instant classic. Holy shit, what a banger. Honestly, each of the games on this list at this point are just outstanding. And they're all of different genres. The range is impressive to say the least. Pick your poison, there are no wrong choices to be made here. At number 6, we have Split Fiction. This is another must-play couch co-op game from Hazelight Studios, the developers behind the outstanding It Takes Two, which was the undisputed game of the year in 2021, mind you. Split Fiction follows the familiar structure of having 2 playable characters, though this time rather than being husband and wife, we have 2 would-be writers stuck inside of a machine whose purpose is to siphon all creative writing ideas from them to feed into the databanks of a corporation. A very apropos topic in the real world, with AI on the horizon, risking a widespread job irrelevancy for many, if not most of mankind. What a time to be alive. Anyway, the unique twist is that both characters are experiencing their unique stories they've written with this immersive technology that they're trying to escape. And it just so happens that each writer has the complete opposite style. Mia is a science fiction writer, whereas Zoe's heart is in fantasy. The variety of gameplay styles, mechanics, and situations and worlds you will explore is something truly remarkable. Few if any games are capable of reinventing themselves not only to this extent in quantity, but also the level of polish around the game mechanics. A single one of these sections could be worthy of an entire game. Yet here, you're treated to dozens of such wonderful experimentation in game design. These are truly unique and inventive ideas that deserve to be studied. But the best part of all this is just so much fun. It genuinely feels like a labor of love, rather than some redundant corporate regurgitation of obsolete gaming ideas. So I'm pleased to see that it received 4 Game Award nominations for Best Game Direction, Best Action Adventure, Best Family Game, and Best Multiplayer Game. It might not have won anything, hard to complain too much seeing that It Takes Two was the big winner of its year, but regardless, it's no secret that this is one of the very best games of the year. Hazelight is on a legendary win streak. I cannot wait to see what they do next. We have finally arrived, the final top 5 games of 2025. The cream of the crop. Each of these games are going to make an unforgettable mark in the history books. Just you watch. We will be studying them for years to come. But before we finish this list in style, I must take a moment to highlight that in any other year, any of these games would be a surefire slam dunk for the Game of the Year position. Frankly, to have any one of these games in a single year is nothing short of a miracle. And yet, we are blessed with several such contenders at the same time. It's astounding. 2025 has been good to gamers indeed. And I imagine that if you've been remotely paying attention to the games that have come out in 2025, I'm sure you can guess which are the final games left for this list. These games have built quite the reputation. And even though they're all indie games, they went on to become massive hits, both critically and commercially. However, what may come as a surprise is some of the rankings. A truly impossible task for such incredible and different games. It's like comparing apples to oranges. They're all wonderful. Still, I followed my heart and I am satisfied with the final list. I'm sticking to my guns with this final ranking. So, let's pull back the veil. Now, I did say indie games, and that is true, except for this next game. As far as I'm concerned, it is the undisputed titan of AAA gamings in this year. At number 5, Donkey Kong Bonanza. This is the Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive that we've been all waiting for, with the release of Nintendo's latest console. And boy, is this a game that uses all the console's technical power. It's rare that we see games in the AAA game development world go out on a limb to build new, ambitious, and complex game mechanics. But that is exactly why Nintendo maintains its reputation as master game developers. In Donkey Kong Bonanza, you have the ability to smash through terrain. Almost the entire geometry of the level could be reshaped by DK's fist, which on its own is impressive to be able to pull that off and not have the game buckle under the weight of all that destruction. But more impressive to me are the functionality of the 3 C's, which stand for character camera controls. Even with the unpredictability of the reshaping terrain, which creates situations with weird camera positions, and the fact that you have a character that can climb close to any surface in the game, it's incredible that the game's controls remain functional within all that chaos. This is another example of some truly black belt level game development. Just wow. And the best part of all that, it's not just a technically impressive feature, which it is. It's just so much damn fun to use. It's super easy to get into. Honestly, playing this game just had a big dumb smile on my face the whole time. But that's not to say it's perfect. It's not. The cringe-inducing moments with Pauline are a bit of an eye roll to me. Generally speaking, the story and characters aren't super engaging. And shockingly, a lot of the boss fights are total pushover. I felt like I'd blink my eyes, mash the button a few times, and the fight was over. Luckily, the rest of the game is a total blast. I ultimately walked away from Bonanza blown away by its creativity. And from a level design point of view, the deeper you go in this game, the wackier and more adventurous the levels got. It's a major highlight in game creation that deserves to be seen all the way through. And even though I did complain about the boss fights, later on in the game there are a few moments that are genuinely super epic. It leaves me very excited for what comes next for these developers. Obviously, we saw this game at the Game Awards with 2 nominations, and it was one of the chosen few up for Game of the Year, which admittedly is a little unexpected to see, seeing that it just had 2 nominations, but it actually won an award for its second nomination for Best Family Game. Frankly, I was sure that Split Fiction was going to take that award home, but it's hard to argue with just how universally awesome this game is. Both of them, really. I genuinely think it was a bit of a coin toss. Regardless, this is a technical landmark, a creative powerhouse, a visual feast for the eyes, and a boatload of fun. It's a smash hit, pun totally intended. And it is a must play for Banana Mike. Ooh, banana! Alright, now we're chaining 4 instant classic indie games one after another. Holy hell, are these devs making gaming history. At number 4, Hollow Knight Silksong. This is a game that's been brewing in the background for years. It was first announced 6 years ago. The long wait and hyped anticipation has become a bit of a meme on the internet, surpassed only by games like Half-Life 3, if such a thing even exists, and a game like GTA 6 of course, which is finally coming out next year. When it finally did launch, it crashed the Steam, the PlayStation, and Nintendo Store all at the same time, when everyone, and I do mean everyone, wanted to buy this thing the moment it was available. It felt like a rare event in the world of gaming. It was a truly exciting time. Now, the end result when we finally did get our paws on Silksong is something that goes far beyond what most games ever hope to achieve. It is a massive, sprawling world that feels like every square inch of it was crafted with minute care. Our playable character Hornet has some of the most dynamic movesets in any action game. She is so agile and precise. Admittedly, it takes a while to get used to the intricacies of her abilities, but one of the most beautiful parts in Silksong is that moment when you master the game mechanics. It's a long and arduous journey to reach that point, yes. But once you do get there, the game evolves into parkour and action poetry. Few games have ever given me this level of prowess in a game. Navigating the world never felt so rewarding, in fact, endlessly rewarding. Each time I thought I discovered everything a room or area had to offer me, I'd be surprised by a major discovery which would at times open a whole new section in the world. Or at the very least unlock a new ability, an upgrade, or yet another bit of fascinating lore. The story and characters in Silksong actually have a super rich history. And even when you finish the final boss, you might think the game is over, but there's an elusive and secret third act of the game. Frankly, even with that first ending, Silksong would be totally worthy of a Game of the Year contender. But this final chapter brings out the most creative and ambitious and most difficult boss fights of the game. You're missing out big time if you don't go the whole way through. And speaking of boss fights, these have to be some of the most creative boss fight designs of all time. There are major highlights in here that I will never forget. Now, this does bring us to the topic of difficulty, and yeah, you've heard correctly, it's insanely hard. Without question, hands down, the hardest game of 2025. And in many cases, well beyond. And even though I do love Silksong, I think there is an argument to be made that it at times falls in the bucket of frustration. For example, the runbacks to the boss rooms are long and fraught with danger, only to reach that said boss and be crushed within moments. Even with upgrades throughout the game, you have a very limited health bar, and so you are forced to run back again and again and again. But even so, I'd say the biggest pain point has to be the flying enemies. Holy shit, are they annoying. They're always just out of reach and chipping away at your health while you're multitasking with other enemies. They're just insufferable, and I haven't met anyone who has disagreed with that statement, even lovers of the game. But once again, even as cruel and brutal as this game is, that feeling of mastery when you slow down, breathe, and truly understand the boss moves, it's a thing of beauty to experience that flow state and have a decisive victory not out of panic or luck, but out of pure battle-hardened skill. And speaking of beauty, this is a gorgeous game. The art direction is a wonder to behold, even from the opening moments. And the more you explore, the beauty and range of the environments and characters is truly a force to be reckoned with. The soundtrack as well is one of the major highlights of the year. A lot of the calmer ambient moments live rent-free in my mind. And we gotta shout out the singing of Chakra and Sharma. Their songs went absolutely viral on social media days after the game came out.
Faridula si manette, doni poina volinette, pina sans mi manicette, d'un enfant sur le banc.
What more can I say at this point that has been already said by pretty much the entire gaming community? So of course it was a massive success at the Game Awards with 5 nominations, no surprises there. It was up for Game of the Year, Best Art Direction, Best Score of Music, Best Independent Game, and it did win 1 award for Best Action Adventure Game. I don't think anyone will complain too much that it didn't win more awards. We all know that this is an instant classic game. Awards or not, it will be remembered as not only one of the best games of 2025, but a decade-defining game, as well as a contender among the all-time greats. And the most shocking and baffling detail about this massive, ambitious, and gloriously impressive game is that it was so cheap. Here in Canada, it cost $25. In the US, it's 20 bucks. Team Cherry could have easily sold it for double, and nobody would have batted an eyelash. The fact that they didn't speaks volumes. It's an exceedingly rare example of developers not trying to nickel and dime their players, and it deserves to be applauded, while also us gamers understanding the fact that other indie developers might not financially be able to permit themselves the same luxury. It would be unfair to compare $20 games to a game like Silksong. It lives in a parallel universe category of its own. Shit, if we're being honest, this crushes full-price AAA games without breaking a single sweat. I mean that both in quantity and quality. As I said in my review, this tiny bug is a titan killer that shook the very foundations of the games industry. It is an exception among exceptional games. And yet, with all those statements, it's only at number 4. Holy crap. That's just how good we've been eating this year in games. Speaking of titan killers, at number 3, Hades 2. Supergiant Games truly are in a league of their own, aren't they? They essentially have a flawless gaming catalog, with each unique game growing in scope and ambition. Literally every game they put out historically has been an instant classic in my eyes, and they just seem to get better and better with each new project. Hades 2 is now their 5th game, and it's also a historical moment in the sense that it's their first sequel. If you're worried that they're selling out, then I got news for you, buddy. The roguelike structure, with god-infused boons, and really the entire game loop established in the original Hades remains here. However, it's been polished to a brilliant sheen. It's basically a Super Saiyan version of Hades. The core mechanics have been revised and deepened with new magic abilities through their Omega forms. Even the dash and cast moves function significantly different this time around. And a lot of the gods have returned, but their boons have received noticeable upgrades. And of course, there's a host of new gods that have joined the roster, and they're all impressive and a lot of fun. I have a bunch of new favorites among these newcomers, such as Hestia and Hera. Oh man, have I had some great runs with them. So even at a base level, this game feels fresh and significantly enhanced. The weapons themselves could be a divisive topic. I think they might initially feel like strange choices for your runs, but the more I'd play this game, the more I would genuinely respect the hell out of their atypical design of each weapon. There are some wacky creative choices made here, admittedly, especially in some of the aspects you eventually unlock, which are alternate versions of those weapons, and boy are there some powerful weapons out there. For me, the aspects of Medea and Moros are S tier. God damn, they're fun to play with and they just wreak havoc. The variety of ways to play makes for a game with seemingly infinite replayability. Even after 100 hours, the game still feels fresh. Due to a wide range of playstyles, builds, difficulties, you're constantly unlocking new things and ways to play. Frankly, this game is just so amazing, I struggle to put it down. The itch to go for one more run is near unstoppable. But even outside of the action gameplay, the story transmitted through the dialogue never seems to end. It's an astonishing amount of quality content that Supergiant Games have crafted. And the dialogue is not only expertly delivered, but the Greek mythology lore is truly fascinating and original in its adaptation to video game. Another detail that is just impossible to miss is just how gorgeous this game is. I am dumbstruck by the art direction of Hades 2. Not a single moment of this game doesn't look phenomenal. And on top of that, not only is this one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen, but I was so pleasantly surprised that on my old shitty laptop, it runs butter smooth without any particularly noticeable difference in quality. This is a prime example of how aesthetics can triumph over graphic power. It's not all about the polygons, folks. It's about the art and intention. So it is a supreme justice to see this game be one of the major contenders at the Game Awards, with 6 nominations. Hell yeah! It was up for Game of the Year, Best Game Direction, Best Score Music, Best Art Direction, Best Independent Game, and like Silksong, it only won 1 award, though in its category for Best Action Game. In any other year, this would be a lock for Game of the Year. This truly is god tier level of game development. But there is another game, against all odds, overshadows even this game. A game that has reached Olympic levels of height in its success and critical acclaim. What a time to be alive. Now, this might be a bit of a plot twist, but my choice for the number 2 spot, and believe me, I've wrestled endlessly with placing this at the number 1 spot, but I just gotta go with my gut instinct. At number 2, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. What an experience. I understand that by this time it feels like the most overhyped game of all time. Everyone, and I do mean everyone, is raving about it, but believe me, there's good reason for that. Let's run the clocks back to the end of April of 2025, when this unsuspecting debut game came out from Sandfall Interactive. I remember me and my colleagues were all curious about it, and some of them were talking about it in the months leading up to its release, which is how I first learned about its existence. And I grew up on all the Final Fantasy games, so it seemed like a game that would be up my alley. But honestly, we didn't think that much more of it. I remember when it first released, I gave it a spin during a lunch break so we could all just take a look at it and just see what it's like. And I remember we felt that the navigation was a little janky, but the world building and art was impressive. So definitely something to check out later that night once we had a bit more time to just immerse ourselves in the world and go at our own rhythm and pace. Now, later that night when I finished the intro, I was genuinely floored and moved in ways that few games have ever had the power to do, and that happened on at least 2 occasions in that intro. It quite literally took my breath away. Like, yo, this went so much harder than anyone expected it to. And that was just the beginning. And for an indie game, and for first-time developers in many cases, the making of this game is a story that deserves to be in the history books. I won't go over all that here, this video is long enough as is, but do check out this extensive video that Skill have made on this subject. It is fascinating to say the least. A true alignment of stars, as it were. But in any case, it was clear to all of us that this was no ordinary game that we were dealing with. Perhaps the turn-based gameplay, a love letter to the classic Final Fantasy games, doesn't exactly reinvent the wheel, though the QTE actions is a nice addition. It helps make the fights that much more engaging. But the visual identity of Clair Obscur is what sets it apart from every other game on the market. This strange dystopian vision of Paris with this twisted Eiffel Tower and an imposing paintress Titan looming in the distance like some doomsday clock leaves quite the impression. There are many moments in the game, visually speaking, that are quite spellbinding. It's an often astonishing astonishingly beautiful game. And then there's the music. There's no question about it, this is the greatest game soundtrack of the year. Composer Laurien Testor and singer Alice Duport-Percier unleashed everything living deep inside their souls. And it shows repeatedly throughout the game's story. There are moments throughout the story that literally had my hairs on end. Once again, just wow. But it all comes back to the story, which is really the element that makes Expedition 33 feel like a larger than life experience. It's an unforgettable journey that would constantly catch me off guard. The intro, as I mentioned, the finale of Act 1 is another major turning point, and the entire lead up to the ending might just be some of the most epic gaming moments I've ever experienced. Yeah, it's that good. It's an all-timer without question. And then there's the end itself. There's an ongoing debate of what is the good or true ending, and whichever one you get, man, what a conclusion. It's the kind of gaming finale that left me speechless for a while. It's a miracle that Kaleidoscope Expedition 33 came together as well as it did. The entire voice acting and motion capture cast deserve the highest of praise. It's phenomenal work across the board. Without them, the emotional depth of the story would just fall flat. But with this cast, it soars to the heavens. So it came as no surprise when we learned that Clair Obscur was up for 12 nominations at the Game Awards, the most of any game that year. Go figure. And it totally swept that award night, winning 9 awards, which sets a new record for the most wins in a single night at that award show. It won Game of the Year, Best Game Direction, Best Narrative, Best Art Direction, Best Score Music, Best Performance. For Jennifer English, there were also 2 other nominations for Ben Starr and Charlie Cox, Best Role-Playing Game, Best Independent Game, and Best Debut Independent Game. The only award it didn't win, apart from the 2 other acting nominees that I mentioned, was for Best Audio Design. Battlefield 6 took that one. Other than a few naysayers, I don't think anyone will argue that justice was done that night. It won for all the right reasons, and it is a historical moment. This truly felt like a once-in-a-generation kind of gaming event, which is why I've been struggling my life debating if this should be at the #1 spot. Because even me, I won't deny that this is the Universal Game of the Year for 2025. Now, I know what you're all thinking. What the hell, man? Are you serious? You sing all this incredible praise, and you were teasing us the whole video was this damn shirt only to pull the rug out from under us at the last second? What do you mean Kaleidoscope Expedition 33 is not the Game of the Year? You just said it was! I can hear all of France screaming across the ocean, Mais c'est quoi ce bordel, putain de merde? But... The Game of the Year on the Bottomless Pit is Blueprints! No hate, never towards Kaleidoscope Expedition 33. It deserves all the love it's received and then some. But there's one game that somehow captured my attention even more. It's a much more soft-spoken game, admittedly, but no other game made me dream of the possibilities of game development quite like this game did. You play Simon P. Jones, and you have been willed the Mount Holly Estate mansion from your deceased great-uncle Herbert S. Sinclair. The mansion and his riches are yours on the condition that you can find the elusive 46th chamber. In this 45-room mansion, the mechanics are simple. You walk up to a door, you interact with it, and then you get to choose from 3 random rooms that you can draft to craft your path towards that lauded 46th chamber. But that simple mechanic cleverly masks the depth of this puzzle box world. And indeed, the map itself is the puzzle, which is so intriguing and unique and novel. Without question, this is the brain teaser of 2025. Paths you create, the room synergies you uncover, and more mysteries will be the key to your success. And that road to success isn't obvious. Though luckily there are numerous ways to achieve it, but it's up to you to figure out how you would achieve it. Your main currency is the number of steps you can take. In other words, the number of times you can walk through doorways. So you do need to be mindful of your navigation paths and strategically place dead ends on your mansion's footprint. And should you fail, it's no biggie. You can try again the next day with a blank slate. So in a way, it is a curious mix of something that feels akin to a roguelike, where you start from scratch each day with very limited permanent upgrades. In Blueprints, knowledge is your greatest currency, where each room is its own individual puzzle, so when you revisit it, you already know what to do, but that's exactly where the magic of Blueprints slowly starts to reveal itself, because it's not about solving individual rooms. There's a much bigger picture that needs to be understood. The whole time you're playing, there's information hidden in plain sight. You just don't know it at the time. It's an incredible achievement in mise-en-scène, storytelling, and puzzle design that invites the player's curiosity and engagement. I know a lot of people who walk around with a notebook, or in my case, a sprawling Miro board, where I'm jotting down all my theories and screenshotting any information that I think could be relevant further on down the line. And creative discussion among friends has never been more invigorating and fruitful than with this casse-tête. Artistically, Blueprints has a beautiful ambience about it. It's initially minimalistic, but in reality, rich with detail and history. There's an incredible craftsmanship in every square inch of this world. The mansion, at first glance with its mountainous environments, may seem cold and lifeless, but I now find it to be super cozy and inviting. Each new room you discover is a wondrous event. The excitement of learning something new and discovering its abilities, or at the very least just visually experiencing it because they're all so beautiful and unique, is a wonder to behold. The music is also a perfect meditative companion to this intricate puzzle experience. It's a soundtrack that quietly resonates on a deep level, and it's actually one of my favorites of the year. I vividly remember a beautiful moment when I was finally making progress, connecting a bunch of dots, and the music was just perfect for that time. It was a near euphoric experience. Now, all that being said, I can understand that this would be a frustrating experience for many. Puzzle games are definitely not everyone's cup of tea, and I can respect that. And even myself, I reached a plateau at one point where I just wasn't making any progress. It really felt like I was spinning my wheels for a long time. And for a brief moment, I did consider dropping the game. But it's exactly after then when, in a fit of revelation, I got an idea. It's at that moment that something clicks in your brain and you start to approach the world from a different angle and experiment. And all of a sudden, the doors start to open in front of you. And as of that moment, you see a new world full of unseen possibilities. Blueprints has a habit of throwing you down a rabbit hole of wacky puzzle design theories that at one point felt crazy and impossible. But now, it might just be true. And if that is true, then could this other harebrained theory have merit? What an exciting idea to explore. Blueprints has some real conspiracy theory level puzzle design, and it just blows my mind. Honestly, that feeling of reaching the final room is a rewarding moment unlike anything I've experienced this year. I remember I was playing at lunch at the office. I was totally locked in the experience and I saw the stars aligning and I saw that, oh my god, this might be the run. I might actually be able to pull it off. And I finally did. And as I crossed the finish line, it was on its own a very emotional moment for me. But it was further elevated by a group of colleagues behind me clapping to my well-earned success. Honestly, it was the most wholesome gaming moment I had all year long. And you better believe that there are deeper mysteries still to uncover in Blueprints. The possibilities in this world. Before wrapping up, this might not have been the smash hit at the Game Awards like some of the other games on this list, but I'm still delighted to see that it got at least 2 Game Award nominations. It was up for Best Independent Game and Best Debut Indie Game. If there was a category for Best Puzzle Game, it would be a lock for a win. No discussion. But beyond all those award shenanigans, it's incredible to consider that this intricate and fiendishly complex game was developed by one man, Tonda Ross, over 8 years. An incredible achievement. Of course, in the end, he had other collaborators, perhaps most notably with David Pellino, the art director who replaced the basic Unity assets that Tonda was using to prototype this game. He did a phenomenal job to give Blueprints its unique and vibrant visual identity. And then Trig and Gusset, the jazz duo that made that incredible soundtrack that I sang praises to earlier. And then a host of specialists to help polish the features of this game, test it out, and bring this game to a shippable quality. They all deserve the highest of praise for their incredible work here. As far as I'm concerned, Blueprints is a genius creation and explores ideas in ways that I haven't seen any other games do. Like I said earlier, it makes me dream of all sorts of unseen possibilities in the realm of game development, and it makes me look forward to the future with wide open eyes. Which is why, for me personally, it's the game of the year. I stand by my decision. No regrets. Whew! And that is it for the top 40 games of 2025 on the Bottomless Pit. As you can see, I put a lot of energy in these videos. Goddamn, do I have fun making these. And I want to once again thank all the developers who worked on all these games. You guys are amazing and you're all such an inspiration. I love that I get to be your peer in this complicated and excited form of artistic expression. Let's keep making incredible games and support each other in our present and future endeavors. If you appreciated this video, by all means like and subscribe and leave a comment. Any engagement goes a long way to helping the channel. I might not have a huge audience, but I'm happy with what I have. And I love that I get to have this personal exercise to express my own voice, ideas, and opinions. And I have a boatload of fun doing it too. Seems like a win-win-win situation as far as I'm concerned. And so I personally thank all of you who have shown up in my life in any shape or form. Thank you all for the support. Wishing you all happy holidays and a happy new year. And above all, wishing you and your loved ones nothing but the best. Take care and talk to you soon. There's still 2 more year-end lists to be done. They are coming eventually, but I think I have earned my Christmas break for now. 2025 was a gigantic year, and now we have an insanely cute kitty. Ah! It's dangerous how cute she is. Anyway, toodaloo.